Howdy. Today is the Saryn Max Investment video. I had no intention of doing this anytime soon, but it just sort of fell into my lap, I guess. I just had nothing else to do with some of my green shards from earlier. And I was like, you know what? I've had a couple people ask. I personally am not that interested in a Saryn max investment because, I mean, whether it's low or max investment, she'll kill everything regardless, but hey, you know what? Might as well. So here we are, I suppose. Now, Saryn, we're gonna vaguely go over her abilities, I guess, for those that don't know how it works. Where is my Saryn build? Here it is. Saryn, yes. Here's the Saryn fashion in case you're interested in what I've got going on. And then also, this Saryn fashion that I was just on, that stuff. I like putting the Community of Tenno, the heart sigil on her boob. I don't know. I feel like that just looks nice. So, Saryn. Let us go over her abilities. Do I have her fourth build? Okay, yes, on this build. Saryn's passive is status effects inflicted upon enemies last 25% longer. Very simple, very basic, and very strong. I like it. But I wish it had something more creative to it, I guess. Her first ability is Spores. Inflict a target with a pox of corrosive spores. Spread spores to nearby enemies by destroying them or killing their host. The longer the spore spreads, its damage will increase. Basically, you just afflict a target with it, and when you kill it, it spreads spores all over the place. And it's fairly straightforward, right? So let's come over here, simulate these enemies. Cast the spores, there it is. And there it goes. Now it's on everything. It just spreads. It does damage, and it spreads corrosive procs to strip enemies' armor. Now, normally, unless you're in low-end content, it's not going to kill stuff with the damage. But I mean, it can if you're doing low-level stuff and you invest into it. Now, it has a 50% base status chance to apply corrosive. So you need 200% strength to guarantee a corrosive proc every time it ticks with damage. It also decays over time, and the decay rate is also affected by duration. And range is, of course, affected by your strength. So, I should have shown that when I was out here. Look, if I put it on this enemy, you can see one infected. And it builds up. As that builds up, that increases the damage you do with your spores. So if you get that to 24,000, your spores are going to do a lot of damage. Now, that's not going to happen all that often, but it's doable. But we are not going to be focusing on a Saryn spore build, okay? I think, actually, that does interest me. A max investment Saryn spore build, but this is a max investment Saryn weapons platform build. So in the future, I might get another Saryn that also will have 5 Archon shards on, and see what that's like, because it takes different shards for that. Next, we have Molt. Molt is very straightforward. Shedding her skin like a snake, Saryn leaves a decoy behind to draw fire from enemies. I'm going to take off my companion real quick. So you literally just cast it, and it's an instant cast. It makes a little decoy. This decoy has immunity for about 3 seconds. Its health scales up based on how much damage it takes during that immunity phase. It has a medium amount of aggro, and you also get a movement speed bonus for a little bit that you cannot see the timer on after you activate it. Extremely straightforward. Oh yeah, and it also cleanses you of all status effects. So the cleanse is very nice. Great survivability tool. Next we have her most broken of her abilities by far. Toxic Lash. While active, attacks deal additional toxin damage. This effect is doubled for melee strikes, instantly bursts spores when attacking afflicted enemies. So the base damage it deals is 30% extra damage, and it has a guaranteed toxin proc. And that 30% extra damage is based off of how much damage you deal. So if I shoot an enemy and I deal 100 damage with a shotgun, right? Or look, right here, 385 damage. If I deal 385 damage, then all the extra pellets, they're going to deal 30% damage of each pellet that hits, right? So this actually has a base multi-shot of 5. So that means each individual pellet that you're going to be shooting out is going to be dealing 82 damage, I think, right? 38.5 plus 38.5. That's, yeah, I think that's 82 damage. Either that or I'm just stupid. That's entirely possible too as well. But that scales off of strength. Now, if you get critical hits, that affects it. All of your damage mods also affect it. And those extra damage instances, they are separate from the damage itself. It is not added into the damage on the weapon. It scales off the damage of the weapon and applies a second hit. So let me find a good weapon to show that off with. First, let me make sure I stay, yeah, that's the build. Okay, so let's say we go with Argonac, okay? Here's all we have on the weapon. I come up here and I shoot this guy. 1 instance of damage. Add in Toxic Lash. Now I have 2 instances of damage. And every single proc from Toxic Lash has a guaranteed toxin proc. Okay? 100% chance of applying. Which is very, very snazzy. And like I said earlier, it scales with strength. So if you have 200% strength, it'll do 60% of your damage as extra damage. And we'll go over why that's so busted in a minute. So then her last ability, Miasma, is what you will almost always be getting rid of with a helmet ability. Release a poisonous miasma that deals viral damage to enemies in range. Foes afflicted by spores are more susceptible to the mist. Basically, it's a giant AoE that has a guaranteed viral proc to all of the enemies it hits, and it multiplies your spore damage by 4 times. So you just cast it, they all get viral, and then the spore damage goes through the roof. It's mostly just to nuke a room when they already have spores on them, but it's not really useful otherwise. That's why you typically get rid of it. Now, let's switch to this build, and then let's talk more about Toxic Lash. Now, Toxic Lash, it scales separately, or how it works is similar to how DOTs work, okay? Meaning, it's going to be affected more than once by faction damage multipliers. Roar. Roar is coded so that it counts as a faction damage increase. Now, if you didn't know, faction damage increases double dip. So if I had a 30% damage increase base strength on Roar, and I do a DOT, I'm going to deal, and let's say I did 100 damage, okay? And that 100 damage applies a toxin proc that deals 100 damage. Well, my 100 damage is going to go up to 130, and then that toxin proc will be 130 multiplied by 30% again. So it is going to bring that up way, way higher to like 169 or something like that. I don't know. I'm bad at math. Basically, it's really strong. Toxic Lash's separate instances of damage work similarly. The Toxic Lash hit double dips from faction multipliers, which is why they're so unbelievably strong. But it gets spicier than that. If you paid attention, then you know that I mentioned that it has guaranteed toxin procs. Those toxin procs also dip into faction multipliers. So the Toxic Lash separate instance of damage double dips the faction multipliers, and the Toxin DOT from Toxin Lash triple dips the damage multiplier. So let's say you had 100% faction multiplier and you did 100 damage, okay? And you added in the multiplier, right? So your 100 damage up front would go from 100 to 200. Your Toxic Lash hit would, like, let's say it was at 30%, or let's just say it's 100% for the sake of making it easier, right? Like the base amount. So then your Toxic Lash hit would then go from what was normally 100, right, to 400. And then your DOT from the Toxic Lash is then going to go from 400 to 800. So your DOTs are now dealing 8 times the damage. That's insane. That is just ridiculous. So that's a lot of damage, and it also states that the effect is doubled for melees. So you actually get double that damage if you're using a melee with Toxic Lash. It's ridiculous. Now, one of the reasons it's so strong as well is that it is a separate instance of damage that applies every time you deal an instance of damage. What that means is all of the gas clouds that deal damage from like dual Ichor and Carnon are also going to be applying the Toxic Lash effect. But on top of that, the Sobek, with its augments, Acid Shells is going to apply that. So Acid Shells is an augment for Sobek where enemies explode on death, dealing 450 corrosive damage. And 45% of the enemy's max HP in a 15-meter radius. This does have damage fall off, a pretty hefty amount. I think it's like 90 or 100%, so it deals way less damage at the end of the explosion. And it does not have a corrosive proc, just corrosive damage, no status effect. Now, 45% of the enemy's max HP means you can't instantly kill enemies that are around the guy you killed. None of your normal mods on the weapon affect it because it's based off the enemy's max HP. Things that affect it are debuffs on the enemy, so like a viral on a group of enemies, or faction multipliers affect this. We have Roar, and because it's dealing an instance of damage, this explosion can apply Toxic Lash, making it so with Toxic Lash you can easily nuke an entire room with Sobek Acid Shells. That's why a lot of people run Sobek with Acid Shells on Saryn, because it's just so unbelievably strong. Now that we covered all of that and why it's so good, we can get to the build. So we do have 5 Talforged Archon shards as per the usual. 4 of them are green and 1 is yellow. The 1 yellow is casting speed. To be honest, this slot is entirely up to you, or flexible, that's what I should say. This slot is flexible, right? I tried several different things. Another green shard you can do, but it's overkill on damage. Another red shard for strength is overkill. Duration is okay, but not needed. You don't even need the casting speed, it's just a little more comfort, so I figured, I guess I'm just going to stick with this. I switched this shard out for different colored shards way too many times. I wasted so much bile. But in the end, I decided that a casting speed shard was just the most comfortable, right? You don't need it, but it's nice. The other 4 shards would be 2 are green for toxin status effects, deal 45% more damage. This is a multiplicative multiplier, but it only affects toxin DOTs. But of course, we have guaranteed toxin DOTs from Toxic Lash. So this is just 90%, right? So nearly double the damage from our Toxic Lash DOTs. We also have 2 for +3 maximum stacks to corrosive status effects. Now, corrosive will full strip at 14 stacks, and normally it has 10. So you don't actually need 2 Talforged to full strip normal enemies. However, enemies such as Rogue Necromechs, which are within the laboratories of Albrecht, or enemies like Acolytes, they have a cap of 4 status effects, meaning you can only put 4 corrosive procs. So this does work on them. It just makes it easier to melt Acolytes and Rogue Necromechs, because then they go from 4 max corrosive procs to 10 for a 80% armor strip. So this is just very nice. Completely unnecessary, but it does have some level of benefit. Now, on to the build. Like I said earlier, I keep saying so many phrases like I said earlier and other stuff. Sorry about that. Roar is the helmet, because, it's just insane, and it scales unbelievably well with Toxic Lash. We have Prime Sure-Footed so that we don't get knocked down. Just run normal Sure-Footed if you don't have this. Brief Respite and Catalyzing Shields is where all of our survivability is coming from, because with Neutral Efficiency and Brief Respite, Casting Molt, which costs 50 energy, gives 75 shields back, and Catalyzing Shields make it so we have 74 shields. So we get our entire shield gate back by casting Molt, which also gives a movement speed buff, creates a decoy that aggroes enemies, and cleanses us. So it is our main way of staying alive is Molt. We then have Prime Continuity for duration, Prime Flow for energy max, Equilibrium for energy. This is very important because we need lots of energy. It's not too expensive to cast Roar or Toxic Lash and Spores, but when things get risky and you have to spam the crap out of Molt to not die, you need energy. Because the moment you run out of energy, you're dead. It's over. So we want to have plenty of energy to spam Molt as much as we possibly need to. So Equilibrium is here. Stretch for a little bit more range. That's mostly just so our spores can spread, because we can still cast spores. It's not needed, but it's still a very nice thing to have. Venom Dose. This is an augment for your first ability where you hold to cast the ability to make it so it gives you 100% corrosive damage It is similar to how modded damage works, except it applies at the very end of the element equation. Not that that matters because it's a mixed element, so it's irrelevant, but you know, just a little extra information. It's 100% corrosive damage to your weapons for 40 seconds, and it applies to teammates. It scales off of duration and strength as well. So, you know, we get, with our 199 strength, we get 199% corrosive damage to our weapons. So we have lots of corrosive on our weapons, and we have corrosive spreading everywhere from spores. But then we have transient fortitude for strength, and we lose a bit of duration, but it's not the end of the world. Umbral intensify for more strength as well. That's what puts us at 199. We're basically 200, so we have guaranteed status procs for corrosive on the enemies, just to make sure we strip their armor as fast as possible. We have Arcane Energize to help with energy even more with Equilibrium, and it's also nice if we're about to bottom out, we get an energy orb, it gives us 150. It's just very nice energy-wise mixed with Equilibrium. And then Arcane Aegis, because this is incredible. This is like the most insane survivability tool in the game. I swear, it's insane. So this helps our survivability even more. Very, very nice. Because we already have so much damage that survivability becomes way more important than upscaling our damage more. So just having the extra energy to spam molts and then, you know, Brief Respite, Arcane Aegis, all of that just helps a lot. That's it for the Warframe build herself. Then we have our companion. We don't have our fourth ability, which means we want to be able to spread viral. Now, there are many ways to spread viral. You can group stuff with viral and with Nautilus. Diarrhea is good for it. You can run Worm for extra survivability with a negate and stuff, and then have using Hellstrom. But I find Pains of Vulpaphyla to be the best, or at least with what I've run with her. It's just convenient, and it spreads very similarly to how Saryn's spore spread, right? It's a viral spore. It just fits her theme extremely well. We have a pretty typical Panzer Vulpaphyla build here. Bite is for the extra crit chance, so that we get high enough crit chance for Tenacious Bond to give us 1.2 final crit damage multiplier on our weapons. Viral Quills is the most important thing here to spread viral. Hasten Deflection for faster shield recharge, and Calculator Redirection for a bigger shield gate to keep it alive. Pack Leader, because this gives it health and overguard when you hit enemies with melee. You don't really need primed Pack Leader, because the overguard gets one shot anyways at the high end or even like mid-level of enemies, so it's there to overguard gate, not to overguard tank. So primed Pack Leader is actually kind of irrelevant here. I don't think it's necessary at all. Synth Deconstruct for a crap ton of health orbs, because it procs when everything is hit by viral, which means more health orbs, which means more energy from Equilibrium. Panzer Devolution, so that we have our guy come back way faster after he dies, and when he is dead, following us around, he can shoot viral out still. Fetch, so he picks stuff up, and we can pick stuff up, like getting vacuumed in, and Reinforced Bond, because we have high enough shields for it to always be active due to Calculated Redirection being maxed, and this gives us an extra 60% reload speed to all of our weapons, and it also means when we reload, we get shields to our companion that can also go into overshields to give it even more survivability. Between Pack Leader, Reinforced Bond, Hasten Deflection, Calculated Redirection, and Panzer Devolution, this thing will have almost 100% uptime. You should have no problem with your Panzer being dead and not hitting stuff. Now, on to the weapons. The best weapon in the primary slot, in my opinion, is, of course, Sobek. I mean, it's Sobek, right? Like, this thing's insane. We have a pretty typical Sobek build here. We have Amalgam, Shock and Barrage for fire rate and revive speed, which is very nice when you're playing with other people. Prime Ravage for crit damage, Critical Deceleration for crit chance, Galvanized Health for multi-shot, Galvanized Stabby for status chance and damage. Then Acid Shells, of course, for the augment, Galvanized Acceleration for more range, Shock and Vendetta for reload speed and multi-shot, because the base reload speed is pretty terrible. And then Pure Toxin damage. Now, the reason we have Pure Toxin damage here is that Toxin damage on your weapon scales the DOT of your Toxic Lash Toxin DOT, okay? It does not scale with any other elemental damage. So by putting on Toxin, right, we get 150%. This is going to increase the DOT damage of our Toxic DOTs from Toxic Lash by another 150%, okay? So altogether now, The toxic DOT, or at least from Sobek, it is going to be 60% of our damage goes into the Toxic Lash, and then it applies the Toxic DOT, which triple dips from Roar, making it go up significantly, gets another 90% multiplying on top of that from these shards, and another 150% multiplying on that from having the toxin on our weapon. Plus, everything's going to be armor stripped completely, and max viral procs from Panzerwulpaphyla. It's going to be ridiculous. Other than that, it is a very typical Sobek build. Technically speaking, the best way to do the most damage with Sobek on her is actually to use normal Sobek. I know that sounds weird, but that is because normal Sobek has a higher Riven Dispo. This has a Dispo of 5, whereas Kufa Sobek has a Dispo of 1. Now, if you have a Toxin Progenitor, it does not affect the toxin damage of the DOTs from Toxic Lash. Only mods do, okay? And that means if you have a Riven with Toxin, it will be a way higher value on the normal Sobek than it will be on the Kuva Sobek. So if you have a Riven with Toxin, the normal Sobek is actually better than the Kuva Sobek, but you're doing so much damage that honestly I don't think it matters at all. It's kind of irrelevant. Next, we have the Reap in So, which is actually the dual Toxocyst Incarnon. Now, I think this is also a pretty hands-down best option when compared to basically any other weapon here. It's just super, super strong. It melts Acolytes unbelievably fast. We have Fevered Frenzy, Marksman's Hand, and Commoddore's Fortune. I'm not going to go too in-depth about Reaping dual Toxis. Most people know how it works. Because we already have Corrosive in our build, we don't need Corrosive on the weapon, so instead we have built for Blast here, and we also have Electric on it, which is then going to mix for gas damage because of the Toxin from Frenzy. Now the 100% Toxin from Frenzy, the trait, counts as modded Toxin, meaning that's going to increase the damage from Toxic Lash, which is insane. So we have Blast and gas damage, and a huge bonus to our Toxic Lash. Secondary Deadhead here because it's nice, but this is where things get a little rough. I'm not quite sure what I would want to do. If you could free up one of these slots in this build, okay? I do not want to get rid of anything we have here, which is the problem. However, our damage is already so insane, we don't really need Deadhead if we still had base damage in the build. But we don't. We have no base damage if we don't get Deadhead or an Arcane for this. But an Arcane that would significantly increase our survivability would be Secondary Fortifier. We'll melt Overguard and we'll get a ton of Overguard for ourselves. Under the optimal circumstances, if you had a Riven, I would run Secondary Fortifier, and the Riven, you would want to have it run any of the mod or the stats here that would let you replace a mod and then have like base damage or something, right? Or like, let's say it had Punch Through and Electric damage, okay? I could remove Jolt and Seeker, put the Riven on, and then here I could have Galvanized Shot instead. That would be a better option. Now, the reason I didn't go and do that is because while I do show Rivens in some of the max investment builds, I don't depend on the Rivens for the max investment builds. And I also can't afford to get the perfect dual Toxocyst Riven for this specific build because I've got 0 platinum. So for now, we will be sticking with Deadhead. But if you can pull off the Fortifier and, you know, have a Riven to make it work, that will give you way better survivability. Next, we have dual Ichor Incarnon, because this is just insane. All 3 of these weapons are easily the best in-slot weapons on Saryn. There's not even any competition. They're so ridiculously powerful with Saryn. So we have this with Alchemist's Wrath, how you say that? Resolute Force, Absolute Valor. If we go to the weapon itself, I have Electric and Gas on the weapon. Melee Influence. I'm using the Crossing Snake stance. We have Discipline's Merit for free heavy attacks. Prime Reach for range, you know, Amalgam, Organ Shatter, Blood Rush, Condition Overload, Weeping Wounds, the very typical stuff. Shocking Touches here because it gives us higher electric weighting and higher electric DOT damage, as opposed to if we used, where is it, Voltaic Strike. you can use Voltaic Strike instead, but I'd rather have the higher electric weighting. And we also already have a ton of status from Weeping Wounds, so we don't need the extra status chance. Finally is our Focus School. The Focus School is up to what you depend on using the most. If you spam your melee the most, I would run Naramon. If you don't care about using your melee all the time, and you wanted like more energy, I don't think you'll ever need more energy, but you could run Zeneric. If you're doing Void Cascade, I would always use Madrai. If you need more survivability, I would go Vazarin, and Unero is pretty much pointless here. The main main three I would use though would be Madrai, Naramon, Vazarin. 90% of the time, I will be on Naramon. If I'm doing Void Cascade, I'm doing Madrai, and if I was doing like an Elite Deep Archimedia, I would go Vazarin. And that is the gist of the build. By the gist, I mean everything, the ins and outs of the build. There's not anything else to it. It's just unbelievably powerful. So next, we will go and do a solo Netracell. That is not really going to matter or be good for showing her off because everything's just going to die anyways. Like, all of the other max investment builds have been so insane that everything just dies immediately anyways in a solo Netracell. And this is Saryn we're talking about. So, of course everything's going to die. But, you know, I'll still show it anyways so you can see it in action. Of course, of course. So you know that it works and that we don't have energy problems. Let us set our thing to solo. And now we can go ahead and do the Netracell. Netracell. I still have 2 runs left. Wow, so I actually get loot when we do this. Let Big Poppy grab a drink real quick. If I didn't remember to timestamp this video, then someone please tell me to in the comments. I've been meaning to do that with my my max investment videos, but I keep forgetting. The only video I think I've only dealt with like the Ember video and the tier list video. But if you want me to timestamp this and I forgot to, then just leave a comment because I read every single comment. So leave a comment and then I'll get to it. Hopefully I don't forget to do it and it will already be something that's done when when I post this. So one can hope, but no guarantees because I'm quite the forgetful person most of the time. Oh my god, I fucking suck at the game. What the hell? Your boy's not good at keeping himself from running into walls. Boogity boogity. I'm gonna need some energy, but I don't want to spam an energy pad yet when I need to run around to all of these computers first. So we'll wait till we get to the big ol' circle to put an energy pad down. There are people that run around and they just like guess where the Netracell is. I've never been able to do that. I'm just real bad at that sort of thing. But oh well, all that matters is that we beat it and that you see that the build works. That's all we care about around here. And that our damage is insane. Look at that. I'm about to die, just press Molt and you're good to go. Gives you your whole shield gate back, cleanses you, pulls aggro. It's everything you could possibly need. You do have to be careful though because catalyzing shields, whenever you're using catalyzing shields for a shield gate build, you only get 1.3 seconds. I personally prefer builds with big shield gates rather than small shield gates because 2.5 seconds is a lot easier to work with than 1.3 seconds before you're dead again. It's not too bad with Saryn because, well, I mean, you know, you get the instant cast of your Molt. But you do have to be very careful, right? Like, as soon as you see your shields break, you should be casting Molts. Lest you run the risk of getting pulverized and then crying because you died. Like me, I've had that happen before, and it's a big sad. My friend Choo Choo, right, Chody Wody, the man himself, he struggles to run this sort of build with short shield gates on her because he just can't remember or pay attention enough to cast his ability right when a shield gate breaks, and that's totally understandable, right? Like, it takes a lot of effort to pay that much attention when you have that short of a window to cast. So, but this is a max investment build, so, you know, we're assuming that you're going to be that big of a PP to, you know, do everything perfectly. Okay, there we go, the HP. I was gonna say, I'm about to freaking die from these freaking debuffs going on. Here we go. Beautiful. I need some health orbs to start dropping. There we go. There's our energy. That's what Daddy's looking for. Oh, yes. I love that Mole is an instant cast. And then when you're on Naramon, if you don't know, there's a perk that, assuming you unlocked it and upgraded it, you know, you can jump up, slam down out of your operator, and then you get double the combo build-up, which makes it easier. Oh, I'm already at 12x, though, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Oh, my roar ran out. I need to recast that. Like so. I mean, look at all of this damage. Everything's just gonna die. After I kill the first Netromite, I think I'll switch to Sobek. And after the second Netromite, I will switch to dual Toxocyst. Just so that you can, like, see the different weapons in action. And there we go. So let's switch to Sobek now. Recast this. And kill all the hands and stuff. Everything's already getting viral spread around because the magical power of Panzerwolfaphyla and how it's insanely busted. The two most insane companions in this game are Panzerwolfaphyla and Nautilus. Like, both of those are just so unbelievably broken, it's insane. Like, whoever thought they should be put in the game, you know what, actually, they deserve a raise. I love it. I know they're broken, but I love it. I love having companions that actually do stuff. Back in my day, companions sucked ass. And the only one anyone ever ran was Shmita Kavat for extra loot. Nowadays, though, there's actually reason to run more than just Shmita Kavat. I just realized I haven't been using my spores at all. I haven't been casting it, and I haven't been getting the buff from the augment with the spores either. That's where a big portion of damage comes from as well. Ah, yeah, see, here comes the problem, is if you forget to do something, and then, you know, you get pulverized because of it. Oh, am I gonna be able to resurrect myself? Okay, yeah, we're good. I wasn't sure, because I have the wrong amp on. I didn't even realize I had the wrong amp on. Yeah, that's why you gotta be careful. There we go, we got Aegis to proc. So when Aegis is active, you're pretty much invincible, which is very, very nice, which is why I like running Aegis so much. It's just so unbelievably comfy to have on. The second Netromite should be spawning any second now. Any second now. Dude, I love Sobek. Honestly, even without the Acid Shells augment, I just feel like it's a really fun, basic, fully automatic shotgun. Like, when I think of a shotgun, Sobek is just, like, it's the street sweeper, right? The street sweeper shotgun. I love it. Very fun. Alright, now we'll be using the dual Toxocyst Incarnon so that you can see this thing as well. This is easily the most broken of the three weapons, I'd say, because, I mean, it's dual Toxocyst. Like, do I even need to say why it's broken? It's dual Toxocyst. It exists, and stuff dies. And here we've got corrosive, and we've got gas, and we've got viral on the weapon, and toxin because of toxic lash, and viral on... Wait, did I say viral? Yeah. Gas, corrosive blast, toxin, and viral spread is already spread everywhere because of our Panzerwolfaphyla. And so everything's just dying. Now, you should have seen by now as to why I run Energize and Equilibrium. Right, because you can see when we get surrounded by enemies, you really have to start spamming Molt to keep yourself from dying. So that's why I put such an emphasis on making sure you have energy. Because I'd rather have energy and not need it than need energy and not have it. Because that means you're dead, and dying is no fun. And that is the entire Netracell. Extremely easy. We got downed once, but I just, you know, resurrected myself. That's something that's really nice about this, is that because we have spores on everything already, so that all the enemies will always be getting armor stripped, and our Panzerwolfephila is spreading viral everywhere, so there's viral procs and everything. It makes it so killing stuff in our operator, if we get downed, is a lot easier than it normally would be. Because if an enemy has no viral procs or armor strip on them, and you're in your operator, killing them is a real pain in the ass. So this build just makes it a lot easier to kill stuff if you're in your operator, because all that stuff is just passively happening. You don't even have to worry about it. So just even more comfort to this already very easy, comfortable build, as long as you spam the crap out of multi. And then if you've got energy to spare, you can also just spam it for the movement speed buff, like I'm doing right now. The buff only lasts like 5 seconds at base, but I mean, it's more than no movement speed buff at all, right? Like, we take what we can get. Still a very strong ability. And that's it for that. I got a melee arcane adapter. Son of a son. That is not what I wanted. Why? My RNG this week has been so bad. The Deep Arc Media gave me a normal blue and a normal red, then a melee arcane adapter and like 2 crescendos. Then my Netracells, this just gave a melee arcane adapter. My last Netracell gave me a normal blue. Oh my god, my RNG last week was also terrible. That's besides the point though. Anyways, if you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe, maybe share this video to other people you know in like Discord or Reddit or whatever, so people can be like, oh, and then, see it. That's gonna do it though. Adios.